just open up here with General Smith, and I just wanted to talk a little bit, given your experience with the National Guard, can you tell us a little bit more, because you've been right in the thick of things here. What is it about the National Guard, or maybe the position that you were in, that in terms of IT and the experience that you have, is it really about keeping the lights on, or is it more than that? And how mature are most National Guard organizations today? And again, you can feel free to highlight other examples, because you've been involved with more than the National Guard as well.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Dick, and good afternoon to everyone. I was the information security officer for the Army, working under the Army Chief Information Officer, and so the Army is not just one big network, but a big network with a lot of sub-networks, including the National Guard, the Army Reserve, the Corps of Engineers, and others like that, who all have a network within the Mother Army. The National Guard is very complex. It's a key part of the United States Army and the defense of the nation. But they, at times, operate as 50 individual states and territories. And so it's a difference between Title 10 and Title 32. Title 10 is when you're on active duty, and the Guard, the Reserves, and the active component certainly train to the same standards and deploy and fight and win our nation's wars. But when not on an active status, the National Guard soldiers and civilians are in a Title 32 status, which means they're really like a state employee, and so they would fall under the jurisdiction generally of the governor and the CIO for each of those states and territories, so it makes it a little more complex. But in all cases, I think most people are seeing service management as an integral part of delivering services faster, better, cheaper, as well as the basis for information security and security operations in understanding what you have in your system. So I think it's very critical, particularly as they're looking at ways with our young millennial soldiers as they're coming on board, who are used to self-provisioning. They don't read instructions. They're digital natives, and having to talk to a live body is of no interest to them. They're used to being able to do everything online, and I think that those states that are more progressive, or those agencies within DoD, are doing a lot more in terms of Tier 0 self-help, and capabilities. And they're finding that not only is faster, better, cheaper for the soldier, but in reporting and with ITEL standards, it is the linchpin for that.
I have to ask this question, but you mentioned the National Guard, and if Trump is talking about sending troops to the border, that's not the National Guard. It is the National Guard. He can call out the National Guard anytime he wants. Is that right?
Certainly can. But as Commander-in-Chief, he can call the National Guard. He can call the Army Reserve. He can call the active component. Our ready forces, the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg.
Right.
And a lot just depends on the capability that the President and the Secretary of Defense are looking for, and who has, there's a 5-year training cycle, and who's in the ready box, who's trained for a particular administrative mission or something like that. And it might be a unit out of Arizona. It could be an Army Reserve unit out of Washington State.
Right.
And they're next to go, which may be Iraq or Afghanistan, or it could be El Paso.
Yeah. Okay. Well, General Smith, let me ask another question, because I spent a little bit of time at the beginning, and we talked a little bit about cost. Mm-hmm. And, I think that, at least in the National Guard, cost is important. Now, sometimes in different DoD organizations, especially if you're looking just at ITSM tool sets, it may not be that big of a deal. But especially within the National Guard, it's just my guess. I'd just be curious to find out that probably every dollar matters, and that's why you'll see more Track It, more FootPrints, ITSM tool sets, as opposed to a bigger tool set that would cost more money. And at the same time, it's the National Guard probably hasn't really moved into the cloud yet to a great extent, right? It's mostly on-premise. Is that right?
That's a fair statement.
Yeah.
But understand that within the Department of Defense, whether you're in the National Guard at Title 32 status or Title 10 or anybody, and every dollar is precious, because it depends on the administration. We still have soldiers forward deployed all over the world, but particularly in Afghanistan. There's some discussion of a national emergency and money being diverted, $5 or $6 billion to build something called a wall, down in the southern states. So you're always on your toes, and those states particularly, or those agencies that have good standards and governance, is very important. But fiscal responsibility is a responsibility of every leader, in DoD. Because and currently within DoD, because of that previously mentioned, every expenditure is being reviewed at the 4-star level.
Yeah.
And so every opportunity you have to wring dollars out of cost and get just in time, just what you need, that does a mission, and that mission, if implemented correctly, can save time, money, and effort, then you're in good shape.
Okay. General Smith, one more question for you, and that is, there's this thing called the fourth estate, and there's been other DoD groups, like at the Pentagon, the JSP, or the Joint Service Provider, and I guess within the Army, there's NetCom as an example, that have tried, and some successfully, to consolidate, right? Because there's tremendous cost savings if you can figure out how to do that. Any chance that the National Guard would do something like that, and maybe you could just comment a little bit about is consolidation overall a good idea, and is it something that's worth moving forward and spending some time on? Yeah?
Certainly, I think there's opportunities for agencies to consolidate service desks. I think that's always prevalent.
Yeah.
There is a risk of becoming so large. But consolidation of service desks says standards, like we have good standards. We understand the service catalog and what we're going to issue and those kind of things. But within Mother Army, the active component, each of the 4-star commands are spending $25, $35 million a year on the service desk. It's not necessarily a core competency. Is that really the business you want to be in? Or if there was let's say a good service desk that implemented configuration management, asset management, problem change, incident, of course, that you could delegate responsibilities to, it would be a significant savings to that agency, significant savings to DoD, significant savings to the taxpayer. But it's got to be better than what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
The National Guard, because it's 50 states and the territories, makes it more complex. Certainly there are senior leaders within the Pentagon in the National Guard, but it's not necessarily something that they can require, but they could certainly take a look at.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, thank you. And Joe, I've got a couple of questions then for you. I talked a little bit about IDLE and version 4 of IDLE, and you've had some experience at National Guard and, of course, other organizations as well going in. And I don't think anybody expects companies like RightStar or BMC to go in and just implement IDLE. They really want things like incident problem change and configuration management. What is your experience with the whole IDLE framework and how it has been implemented either within the tool set or within the different organizations that you've observed?
Well, so that's a great question, and good afternoon, everybody. The answer to that question is FootPrints is really designed to conform to ITIL best practices, but I'll be honest with you, as the general was saying, the organizations sometimes care, sometimes don't, and really ITIL is less important to them than a robust tool set that provides them the ability to have workflow automation, to have reportability on different aspects of running their organization, whether it's break fix type things or people requesting services from a service catalog and being able to show those types of things. And we have customers that literally don't even use FootPrints for IT services. They use it for the workflow engine. So ITIL is important to a lot of people, and I think the bigger the organization, the more prevalent. But most of the organizations that I work with, the small to medium-sized organizations, it's really just help me get my job done.
Yeah. Well, what do you think really is important? I mean, you worked with again a number of different organizations. Is it something like discovery software like BMC to assist with asset management and trying to figure out what they have versus what they really think they have, or is it maybe request fulfillment types of systems to try to make sure they have the proper workflow, again, to improve efficiency? Is there anything that sort of pops up that you can think, Joe, that makes sense, that you've been able to observe? Is there one sort of driving reason that somebody might say, hey, we got to have this tool set in here right now? We need some help in this area, or is it a lot of different things?
So a lot of the customers that come to FootPrints are customers that have had poor experiences with other, maybe even less efficient systems, and really just couldn't get out of the system what they were hoping to get. You mentioned discovery. If one of the things that FootPrints provides is a very robust configuration management database, and with that, you want to be able to populate that with some sort of a discovery source. The worst thing you can do is try to hand jam or use spreadsheets to bring in data about assets and things of that nature, because that data is probably outdated by the time you're done typing it into the spreadsheet. So that's a very one of those things that's very important. And when you have that configuration management database, then you have the ability to link those configuration items, whether they're hardware, software, and so on, into your IT service management solution, which then allows you to go back and report on weak links, on how many times you had problems with, say, Salesforce.com or what have you. Not that they ever have problems, but what's important again is people want to have the ability to go in, create a request, and have a timely resolution of that request. The IT people want to have the ability to be notified when tickets have sat too long, so they need a robust SLA system and things of that nature. It really is a matter of customers that have matured beyond the product that they're currently using, and they just need a little bit more, but they don't need and again, yes, I work for BMC, but they don't need the remedy level support and don't have the manpower to support a remedy level product.
Okay. And General Smith, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think Joe's spot on, but I also think that besides the robust capability, it's also the best practices that comes with it, the expertise that comes with that. And I think when people are stumped with ITIL and how to squeeze more dollars out of it, having a team that can come in and help, guide and direct, particularly with best practices. But as a senior leader, most people would say, how can you defend things you can't see?
Yeah.
So if I don't have asset management, if we're not doing configuration management, then you're never, ever going to be able to keep up.
Right.
You're not going to be able to keep up with your Windows 10 conversion. You're not going to be able to keep up with cyber defense because you're not doing the most basic fundamentals. And this is what I would consider a combined capability, great tools, and then the expertise.
Okay. Joe, one final question, and we'll save, if there were some other questions, we'll save those to the end. But how easy is it to get FootPrints up and running, or based upon your experience, anyway?
well, based on my experience, it's very easy. But to be honest with you, that's a very open-ended question. So the installation process for Footprints is a very short, a couple of hours, really, and including the ability to lay down templates that are, again, based in ITIL best practices for incident management, problem management, service request management, change management. All of those functions can be pre-configured, but they're never quite exactly what every organization needs. So we're going to give you some examples about categorizations and so on, but organizations are going to want to have specific things that they need tracked. So Footprints is also open enough to allow you to create as many additional fields as you need, to modify the workflows that come out of the box, or just throw them out and start over. And, again, it depends on how close the product is to their, to what they need coming out of the box. And I'll be honest with you, most customers are going to spend a minimum of about 2 weeks to get a decent working service desk, and that's typically with an organization like RightStar helping them with the services and the best practices and the training, of course. And then when we start to talk about rolling out things like a service catalog, if you've properly trained on the product, you kind of already understand how to create these record types and these containers and so on. But again, having that initial assistance to learn it is something that's very important. So, we typically see about 2 weeks for the first basic service desk pieces to hit the road, and then about a week for each additional module. And there's probably 6 different modules that people tend to leverage in the product.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks very much, Joe and General Smith. Thank you for your comments. And
pleasure.
Again, we'll save some questions for the end as well. So Joe, that means that you're up now.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, so let me switch my screen here so you can actually see where I'm headed. So again, my primary focus here at BMC, I've been here at BMC for almost 15 years now. I've worked with the remedies, I've worked with the discovery tools, I've worked with a number of different products, and my current focus is working with the Footprints and BMC client management products, which really and truly dovetail together because they were designed by the same set of engineers to work together in providing services that your service desk people can really take advantage of. Things like being able to launch a remote control session from within a ticket, or view and edit the file system and registry from within a ticket. All of these things are designed to be very easy to configure. So the out-of-the-box configurations between those integrations between those two products are very extensive. So being able to offer service through software through a service catalog and things of that nature, all of this is just configuration. One of the things that you'll see with Footprints is there's no need to do any coding until you get to the point where you want to start developing with APIs. So again, as we go through, just bear in mind that everything that you're going to see me show today is something that required no coding whatsoever at all. So again, I mentioned the templates that we have in coming out of the box. And again, one of the functions that Footprints provides us is the ability to leverage these templates to create an incident management platform, a problem management platform. Now, each of these is distinctly separate record types. So an incident is a different record type than a service request. And there's no limit to the number of record types that we can create in the system, as well as the number of fields. Now, each of these record types also has a number of different forms associated with them. So we have end users. They're not IT people, but they want to be able to report a problem through a self-service portal. Those are millennials. In general, you hit it right on the head. I can text my daughter and she'll answer immediately. If I try to dial the phone, not going to happen.
No way.
So, again, if we can provide a self-service portal that's meaningful and useful to these people, we can get them to enter tickets, give us more data than they would typically send via email, give them the ability to request services through the self-service portal. So, again, the framework here is for us to be able to create a form that they can make those requests on that's very simple, but the people that are processing those requests on the back end would have a different form that exposed all the process, all the workflow, and that sort of thing. So again, Footprints naturally makes it easy for you to present those types of offerings to your customers. The knowledge base, again, a framework that we'll build out and offer as a framework. You can have as many of those as you like, and we have customers that use them for all kinds of different functions within the product, as well as being able to leverage it for IT knowledge base. Now, the change management module is one of these things that within the product, we have a very extensive workflow engine that's actually designed to look and feel like a Visio diagram. So with the process engine and the workflow engine being very visual, we have the ability to create these workflows with milestones and so on that allow us to go through and do very complex changes, very simple changes. Complete releases to, just a simple replacing of a hard drive on a machine that's on one of your high-side networks that you have to make sure that you've destroyed the hard drive and all that good stuff, right? So all of these processes can be tasked through a very robust change management system with subtasks and other types of functions associated with it. So again, the idea behind Footprints is we deliver an IT service management platform out of the box, but we also have incorporated in the product a feature we call workspaces. We think of it as kind of a multi-tenancy within an organization. And what those workspaces do is allow us to create a containerized, segregated area within the product where we can start to expand out and explore other options of service management that we can deliver within the organization. So some of the examples that we typically use in the civilian space, it's things like HR or facilities management or external customer service and things that those types of things. Where, again, we can have customers filling in very simple request forms and then agents that are filling it or responding with the process behind that. I could be a customer in any container and an agent in a different container. So having the flexibility to have different roles, different role-based access, different portals for each of these different organizations is something that is certainly available to you. Now, I mentioned the word segregated, but they're not isolated. So again, the example we'd like to give is I have an onboard process and my new hire is going to start at the first of the month. Well, I want to be able to automatically trigger tasks to be created for IT and tasks to be created for facilities that become subtasks to my original request coming out of HR so I can see the status of those tasks. Maybe I can't interact with them because I'm only a customer in IT, but I can still see the status. And that's the idea behind what we're trying to deliver with Footprints is, again, a very robust business service management platform, but something that's very easy to configure. So that's the slides I wanted to bore you guys with. Now what I'd like to do is just kind of take you into, again, Joe's world of what I think a self-service portal could look like. Some of the offerings that the National Guard could potentially consider, as ideas for things that they could deliver to their service members. And again, I'll take you through this a step at a time. So typically when a user logs in, especially a millennial, we want to drop them either into the knowledge base or service catalog, right? We don't want to have a bunch of buttons at the top of the screen where somebody has to go in and figure out what kind of a ticket they need to create, right? So we want to guide them through the service catalog to the right area of how to make the right kind of a request. Now, what you see at the top of the screen, these are what we call widgets. You can use them or not. A customer, once a person creates a ticket, they would always have visibility to that ticket until such time as that ticket is closed or resolved, right? We have the ability to pop announcements on and off the screen very quickly. So again, you can use this for updating people and letting them know things that are going on. But the service catalog can be searched very easily. We do support very complex searching. We also support very simple things. Like, so, maybe I have some training coming up and I want to, request a billeting somewhere, right? So I can type in that word and literally it will search the entire service catalog for anything that has that word either in the text or in the help or the body of the request itself. And, A service member could come in here, make this request, basically fill out the form. Let me go ahead and collapse this so we can see the whole form. So again, we can pre-populate it with a template. Because it's a service catalog entry and we've kind of driven them to a spot, we know basically what kind of information they're going to want to enter. Now, here, what we've got is a place for the person to fill in their name. But the address book within FootPrints can support functioning and have all of these fields associated and automatically populated, and all I have to do is check this box, right? Now, if I'm going to have guests with me and I'm requesting billeting for some other purpose, I might put those guest names in there, right? Now, we can have required fields. We can have fields that are only necessary to be populated in certain conditions, right? So again, we can come in here. We can say what component are we? U.S. Army, and we're going to say National Guard at this point. And the purpose of the visit might be for annual training. When are you going to arrive? Basically, what we're doing here is we're setting up a schedule that somebody else can look at and fill in. Again, request the room service or whatever it happens to be, and then of course we can have the equivalent of an electronic signature or something of that nature if we need it. But again, just filling in this line here with my title and my role. Now, you notice it turned red there. That's because this is a required field, and if it's not filled in, I can't save the form. Let's just do this. J. Carr, good enough. Oops. And again, submitting the ticket, it's a fairly painless process to be able to go through and make these various different requests, right? Now, again, if I come back up to the top, that could just as easily have been an issue with a problem I'm having with a computer, or maybe I'm requesting access for a new piece of software or something of that nature. So we have, again, the ability to request software. Here in this scenario, if I was requesting something like Microsoft Project, which is going to require somebody to go out and get a license, that might go through an approval process that automatically goes to my supervisor. Whereas something like Firefox, in conjunction with BMC Client Management, could automatically be deployed to your desktop the minute you make that selection, because it's a pre-approved piece of software. So again, different types of records can be front-ended. Suppose what I'm looking to do is maybe what I need to do is fill in a Manpower request form, right? So again, I come in here, I fill in all the proper paperwork. It gets forwarded to the right organization with the right, with the rules on the back end, looking at the request type, who it's coming from, knowing who to route that ticket to based on what their role is in the organization. But again, there's no limitation to the number of different types of tickets that we could front end through a system like this. So again, I take you down that road because I just wanted to point out that we have the ability to have different types of records behind any different type of a service request. We also have a way to provide answers to our end users, right? So again, we have a very robust search feature. So if I had a question about, say, a printer jam, all right, I could just come in here and I could type something like that, and I would be able to launch into some sort of a knowledge article that talked about how to clear a printer jam. Well, that can have pictures, it can have all kinds of different things, right? Maybe what I'm looking for is some information that's completely unrelated to IT. It might have something to do with, position requisitions and so or requirements. So again, we could provide almost any kind of information behind these different lists that we need available. So when we talk about going beyond IT service management, this is what we're talking about with FootPrints. It's very easy to leverage all of this functionality through any number of different layers within the product. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, this is the view that I've presented to the average soldier. Now, if I'm, say, in the training department or something of that nature, and I'm considered an agent in the system, which means I'm going to process a request, I might have a completely different look and feel to my portal, right? So when I log in, I see the service catalog, I see the knowledge base, but I also see the training and billet requests. So again, if we come in here and we look, we see the information that was filled out by that end user. We get all of the information about that user automatically populated, again, because we've linked that to the address book. We know where they want to go, why they're going, and so on. And again, what we can do is we can start to route this for the right approvals, whatever it needs to happen, and again, build a very robust workflow around that process, or have a very streamlined workflow, all depending on the different types of requests that come through. So again, this focusing here on what somebody in a particular organizational unit would see. Again, if I'm in IT, as an IT service manager or an agent, I might see a completely different view. So again, depending on your role, depending on your perspective as a user within the system, you'd be able to go in and see different aspects of the product. So here what we're looking at is incidents that have been created in the system, meaning break fix, not a service request. Service requests are typically I want, I need type things. And again, as I said, we can front end just about any kind of a request. When a customer creates a request, it's a very simple catalog or a very simple form. But again, when an agent opens that form, they have, again, all that process exposed to them that they would be able to go through, trigger off workflow to happen, and so on, right? Now, very quickly take you down a rat hole because I don't want to spend too much time, but again, I want to show you what we're talking about when we talk about ease of configuration and so on. So again, as an IT manager, I might have a different perspective than the people I'm sending out to actually do the work. So I want to see SLAs and things of that nature. Now, when I talk about workflow management, right? So let's take change management as an example. Out of the box, we try to conform to ITIL, and ITIL recognized, at least at the time we developed this, 3 distinctly different kinds of changes. Right? A standard change is kind of a pre-approved, maybe it requires a change manager to look at it. Emergency, you didn't have time to ask permission. And normal change. This is one of those granddaddy changes processes that you would have to potentially go through in order to make a massive change to some service that you're delivering, potentially even the National Guard portal or something. So here we would have the ability to send it through multiple different approval processes, but the direction of these arrows is very restrictive. What it means is I have to step on every one of these milestones to get from A to Z. So when we talk about being able to create a workflow process that's flexible or rigid, that's what we mean. And we can develop those for any process that we're delivering anywhere within the system, whether it's our training function, whether it's our motor pool requests, it's all there for you, right? Again, I mentioned the fact that we have these containers that have multiple record types in it. Each of those record types has multiple forms. So again, to create a very simple form, I have drag and drop functionality where I could just simply drag fields onto the form, or I could use my forms controls to actually create those fields. So again, configuration, it's all configuration. There's really no customization required in this product until such time, as I said, you get ready to start getting into API integrations and things of that nature. Speaking of integrations, again, out of the box, Active Directory, password reset support for multiple directory services in a single instance of service of footprints, the ability for us to link to Outlook or Exchange calendars, Outlook 365 or Exchange calendars, so the agents and technicians can update their personal calendar with a doctor's appointment or a leave request or something of that nature, and it would show up in the calendar within here for that particular user. It would also show up in the availability calendar where we could see who's working what hours on what days and so on, who's got what tickets assigned to them. So again, when I create a request or a calendar appointment to go fix something, it creates an entry in here where my management could come in and see the types of things that I have on my plate, see how busy I am, and so on. This is, again, footprints in a nutshell. If we had, again, different areas of the organization we wanted to support, We could have a facilities or a motor pool section. Again, a completely different look and feel, a completely different type of tickets, right? So we've got these different things that we want to be able to provide, but we also have, you know, the ability to deliver those same service catalog functions, the same inventory functions, and so on. Dick, how am I doing? Any questions?
You're doing great.
Any questions pop into your head at this point?
Yeah, and in fact, now would be a good time to submit a question or two. There's a Q&A box, but there is a question that's popped up. And Joe, the question is, how is FootPrints sold? And maybe they want to know, are there suite versions? Are there options for different modules, or, you know, on-premise, that sort of thing? Right.
So the way the product is sold is, again, I hate to take you back to slides, but let me take you back one level here. So the functions that you see here are all functions that are native to the product. The only two optional items are the configuration management database and the change management database. Now, the way it's sold is it's based on the number of people that need to process tickets, i.e. agents, right? So licensed users. Now, a user can have a named fixed license, which is like having a reserved parking place, or they can be a concurrent licensed user where they're only coming in every now and then, or they're just coming in to do a quick update and moving on. Those users can share typically 3 to 5 to a concurrent license. And so that's the way the product is sold, is based on that. Now, once you start to expand into these other areas, start to do offerings or start to create other workspaces, again, the only people that you would need are the people that are going to process those requests. So they would have to have a license of some sort to allow them to process the requests. Anybody, any number, there's no limitation to the number of end users that could come into this portal and make some sort of a request.
Right. Well, that's what I like about FootPrints. It's a great value then, and it's not. Obviously, the BMC is not trying to nickel and dime you for every little thing that you might want to do. So it's sort of you can you know what it's going to cost you, and you don't have to worry about being upcharged or upsold. Yeah,
right.
I like that. Okay. There's another question that has come in. It says we have Trackit. How do we go about migrating to FootPrints? And I guess they could have anything really. What do you see is the best way to get to FootPrints from some other product?
So that's a very good question. So with Trackit, believe it or not, with the new release of Trackit, we're now using the BMC client management to populate the assets within that Trackit, the new Trackit system. So it's the same back end. The same back end is used for Remedy. So that BMC client management is now part of all of our service desk offerings. Customers that own Trackit, it's a perpetual license. So you can decide to just put it in a corner and stop using it, stop paying maintenance on it, and then just use it for going back and looking at data. That's obviously the cheapest way to go. If what you need to do is import that data into FootPrints so you have a single place to go for looking at those older tickets, it would be a fairly simple process to go in and just create a record type in a container called old Trackit, and all we have to do is match up the field names of the data coming over and do the data import exercise. What we would not want to try to do is migrate the process, the functions that you're doing in Trackit, because they're so very limited, and they limit you in the types of things that you can do, the forms, the look and feel. There's no point in reinventing Trackit when you come in here, but easy enough to get that data in. And again, an organization like yours has got, I know, in fact, I talked to one of your guys the other day who's very adept at moving data from system to system.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So again, the basic options are keep it, don't do anything with it. Now, if you choose, you have the ability to use license credit to move up to FootPrints. So you would get credit for any unused maintenance and credit for any licenses that you had to a certain percentage into FootPrints. But again, there's different ways that that's handled.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let me ask you another question, because, Joe, you showed a lot of applications that were custom built, but there were applications, it was really workflow, that it didn't take a lot of effort to put some of these things together, but yet it solved a real need that was out there. And I would guess that the National Guard or maybe other government organizations have similar types of requirements. I mean, I think there was an HR, there was an education, maybe you had a finance app that you showed. Is there any kind of central repository that other agencies could rely on? Because I think the government likes to share, and even though they may not like to consolidate, maybe for political reasons, they don't mind sharing. And actually, maybe, General Smith, maybe that's a better question for you. Is there some way that we could take advantage of some of the things that we've done, or maybe that other agencies have done, and put it in some sort of repository where other organizations can help themselves do it?
Yeah, you think of it as a users group. Mm-hmm. Certainly. And I was just admiring Joe's work, because thinking about in the National Guard, the preponderance of people that are requiring services may not be on an active status. So they're having to take time out from their other work or their family or something, and especially, we don't call it HR, we call it G1, but yeah,
okay.
But administration. But, so when you're, as a National Guard or Army Reserve soldier, active component soldier, same standards. So same training requirements, but you're full-time, I'm part-time. So a lot of the coursework that I might have to do is correspondence. So that he showed a whole chain for that, the whole workflow. But the other part is some of the training, particularly the professional training, requires a resident phase. You must go to the school because it's mentally and physically challenging. But because of that workflow that he was showing, it also says that for you, somebody has to approve you going to the course. Orders have to be cut. Transportation has to be accounted for. A travel card might have to be issued, like a Visa card, government card. But also there are requirements that can be shown as you must have a current physical fitness test to this standard. Yeah. You must maintain height and weight requirements. You must have this pre-course material done. Whole checklists that, keep the soldier from thinking that he or she's good to go, and there's 9 or 10 things that are going to come up later. So this is a tremendous time savings, and with all of that data is reporting and information, to leadership top to bottom. So, but back to your question, I think it is, that's the discussion we had prior to the demo in terms of best practices or what we'd call industry standards. And the best people to get it from are people that are already using it better than you do, right?
Well, so is there such a thing as a – go ahead.
I was going to say, just let me expand on that, because the question I was going to ask the General is, do they get together and have conversations about these things? Do they have a community?
Sure.
So one of the things that you're seeing here is, again, this training request and this container that I created called training. If I wanted to share that with another National Guard organization in another state, I could simply export that template, and it would automatically create an XML file that would recreate this request type and this record type. It would create all of the forms, all of the data entry pieces that I did, and they could just simply go in and create a new template or a new container using that same template and have exactly what I have in my environment, and then they can go in and tweak it, right? So their billeting locations might be slightly different from state to state, right? But
you're only changing the presentation layer, Right. I mean, you're changing South Carolina to North Carolina, but the process flow is 9/10 of the work.
I prefer going from North Carolina to South Carolina, but that's just me.
Understood. Yeah.
that's terrific. And if that might be something that we could help promote through user groups or through some sort of online community where that would be available. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I think that that just about does it in terms of questions and the presentation and the format and everything else. So I wanted to say, General Smith, thank you very much for your time today. Joe, thanks for your time. Just a terrific discussion I think that we've had, and I appreciate everybody that has taken 50 minutes or so out of your schedule today to sign on and join us.